So this is a new film by director by Gia Coppola of the Francis Ford Coppola family. I'm not sure how she's related, but she's part of that. Written by Kate Gersten, which stars Pamela Anderson. Has had a lot of awards buzz around about her performance. The Last Girl stars. Like I said, Pamela Anderson as Shelley, who is a Las Vegas showgirl. She's been doing the show for 30 years. She was a star of the 80s, and the dancers get noticed that the show's going to be wrapping in a couple of weeks. It's kind of old. It's a bit out of touch, like, hasn't really changed with the times. Everyone's devastated and trying to figure out, well, what are they going to do next? This is all I've done, not all I've ever known. We'll see. They try to audition for other things, see what other opportunities. And they're a nice little kind of found family. There's some younger dancers played by Brenda Song and Kiernan Shipka, who's in everything these days. That are these like 20 something dancers who are like kind of new to Las Vegas and just kind of making it work. But they hang out outside of work. They get kind of life advice. Jamie Lee Curtis is also in it, as she's a cocktail waitress with a gambling problem, but who's a good friend of everyone involved. There's some family drama with Billy Lord as the daughter of Shelley's daughter, and some things there I'm not going to get into right now. And then Dave Bautista, of course, who shows up. He's kind of the lighting tech stagehand, but behind the scenes guy, who's the go-between between the higher ups and the dancers themselves. So that's our setup. And Pamela Anderson, for those who may not know, was a huge icon of the 90s, big sex symbol. She was on Baywatch, which was a lifeguarding show that had lots of slow motion people running on the beach. She was also in Home Improvement for like 7 seasons. So big star of the 90s, did a lot of TV, has not done a lot since then. And so a big kind of comeback out of nowhere. So that's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
So I think The Last Showgirl is a good movie. I think it's a good movie. I think it's not for everybody. I think it's a little dreamlike in parts that I didn't expect, and maybe a little inconsistent, but ultimately, like, this story of this woman who has been just this absolute gem of beauty and grace her whole life, finding that, like, time has passed and things have changed, and like her position as that top star has fallen, and having to deal with that fallout is such a great role for Pam Anderson. It definitely feels a lot like Demi Moore in The Substance. Like, it's the story of a woman who is still beautiful in nearly every way, but just not in the way that society wants or deems valuable. Like, and so she feels less valuable. It's strong, it's powerful. Anderson is given a brilliant supporting cast around her, full of talent. Everybody's doing a great job in this movie, which helps a lot because she is not the most up-to-date actress. It's been a minute. People are calling this a big comeback for her, right? Like, most of her stuff has been pretty small lately. So it's really good to give her kind of this backing of like lots of talent and set her up as this kind of just big softy. Like, her character's so soft and she's so sincere. And she makes mistakes, and she's not perfect. And like, that makes her feel so uniquely human in a story that's like intimate and small and thoughtful, set against the backdrop of a dusty and ever-changing Las Vegas Strip. Like, I think Last Showgirl's good. I think it's a good movie, though again, it's not without problems. So excited to talk about it. Where do you want to jump in?
I want to start with Shelley, Pamela Anderson's character. Different than I kind of anticipated. I'm not sure what I thought, but she brings this like optimistic naivete to the role where, I mean, things aren't looking good. This is kind of the only thing she can do, and she's about to be out of a job. But she's really optimistic, and she's like, no, they'll figure something out. The show's, it's classic. Everyone loves the show. They won't cancel it. And that's kind of how she approaches all of life. She's very optimistic about everything in somewhat of a naive way, but she also is just, she's a dreamer. She's passionate about dancing. She loves to dance. She loves being able to have been a professional dancer her whole life. And like, when she's at home she watches old, black and white French dance films, and she mimics it, and so she has this passion for what she does. Whereas to everyone else, they're like, it's just a job. Like the young girls, Kiernan Shipka is like, this is a job. Like this pays the bills. That's why I'm doing this. And Shelley's offended by this thought, so she has this passion. She's in love with this, almost to a fault for sure. She has sacrificed people and other things to be able to kind of do this all her life. And I was really impressed by the performance and the kind of the character that we got.
Yeah, performances are incredible all around. Like I said, Pam Anderson is a little inexperienced, but her character is so soft and kind of has this like baby doll voice, and she's clearly very childish. Like her home is surrounded by her home is decorated with like the trappings of Las Vegas, these like ornate fixtures and wallpaper that like is kind of cheesy, but in the right setting, like feels like what she knows so well, which is like her workplace and Vegas and the Strip. And meanwhile, she's got like Barbie dolls around and like pictures of her when she was young. Like clearly somebody who's been living in this suspended state of reality out in Las Vegas, where every night you're doing the show and it's kind of the same, and things have changed and things have moved around her. But Shelley is functionally resolute because she feels like this is my place. Like this is the place where I am valued and have talent and I am wanted and I am an essential part of La Razzle Dazzle, which is the show that you're doing in the film. Additionally, performances. Jamie Lee Curtis is incredible in this movie. She's super good. I liked her more and more as the movie went on, as the opposite like seesaw end of Shelley, like a woman who was kicked out of the show a few years ago and is now working as a cocktail waitress, and things are not going good, and her spray tan's a little too dark. But also, like she
It's a great character.
Yes, everybody in this movie is celebrated in their own way. Like she also gets a moment towards the end of the film where she gets to kind of like feel herself and be a unique shape in this place of Las Vegas where everybody starts to look the same. Dave Bautista is fantastic as this kind of head of the show who is genuinely moved by the fact that it's ending. Like honestly sees value in it as well. He's not just some faceless boss who's like, we're cutting the show off, we're figuring it out, good to see you later. No, he is genuinely moved and struggles to relate that emotion to the women in the show around him. Kiernan Shipka and Brenda Song, fantastic. Billy Lord's a lot of fun. I think what's cool about the show, about The Last Showgirl, is based on a thing that I saw. I share a little personal experience. So when I went to Vegas a while back, Chris and I went and saw this show called Jubilee, which was at the MGM Hotel, I think, or I don't remember which one. And it was exactly the show that La Razzle Dazzle is. It is a bunch of girls in giant glam and basically half nude and covered in rhinestones and doing like big historical set pieces throughout history. Like they had a whole Titanic set that came out. It was a whole thing. It's big motion. It's 50 topless dancers. That show ran for like 35 years and closed in 2016. And the woman who wrote this movie saw that show before it closed and wrote the screenplay that turned into this. It's based on that exact thing. It's based, and when I saw the show Jubilee, it was exactly what Razzle Dazzle is. It is dusty and old, but there's a bit of magic in it. When you actually watch it and you see all these performers, there's this part of like, you see this glimmer of like an older time, an older Las Vegas when this was valued more. And that's so present here in Shelley's story. Like, and this is presented brilliantly in the movie because you don't get to see a lot of La Razzle Dazzle. In fact, you see not much of it, but you see them prepping for it and getting ready for it. And it's all this great backdrop for asking the question, was it all worth it? Was it worth it to like spend your life dedicated to the show that now other people think is junk? Was it worth it to spend so much time like being the star of a show that other people don't perceive as valuable anymore? Maybe it was valuable. Maybe it never was. And Shelley is forced to face this on top of just losing her job and having to figure out what she's going to do as a woman with like no retirement, right? Like it's stressful, and manages to be surprisingly funny in the wake of all that. I was surprised by how funny this script is.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy intentionally and possibly unintentionally in the first half, for sure. And yeah, it's again, thematically, it's really strong. It's also dealing with, similar to The Substance, the pressure of youth and beauty. on these women. Kiernan Shipka and Brenda Song, they're in their 20s, so they're getting lots of audition. You know, they're like, "Well, I'm auditioning for this. I'm auditioning for that. I got to call back for this." And like the older women, they're not getting any of that. Um, and even then, they have to do completely different shows. There's a really funny bit where Kiernan Shipka does her routine to the show she tried out on. It's a very like super sexualized thing, and like Shelley is like aghast at it. She's like, I can't even look at you while you're doing this. But and same thing with Jamie Lee Curtis's character Annette, who's she gets cut from the show floor as a cocktail waitress, and the younger women get to stay because they're deemed more beautiful and attractive for the guests. And so it's kind of wrestling with some of those same things that we get in the substance. Also, Shelley's character is, again, it's about the sacrifice, because we learn that she's estranged from her daughter Hannah, played by Billy Lord, and part of the B plot is them working on their relationship, trying to repair years of neglect, and just being more concerned with the show than with her family. So there's a lot going on in this movie for sure.
Yeah, and a really powerful scene when Lord confronts, Anderson's character, and was like, "This was the reason, like you were off working instead of like spending time with me." Like, it's tough, dude. Like, it's definitely emotionally taxing, and it has a lot to say about being a mother and being a daughter and found family. There's a great scene with Kiernan Shipka when she comes to Pamela Anderson's door and is like, "Hey, I need help," and Anderson's got to deal with that in her own way. I'm surprised at the number of like fundamental flaws these characters have, but also like it kind of fits for these people who are out in the desert performing, who have left their families and left the people around them to go chase their dream out in Las Vegas. And while the Razzle Dazzle like can be seen as this like trashy show, at the same time, yeah, like Kiernan Shipka's character is going out for a show called Hedonist Circus, which is really funny. And doing like this alluring dance and I don't know. I love the way Anderson like shies away from that. Oh my God, I can never do a show like that. That's trashy and gross. And everybody's like, "Girl, look at what we're doing here.
Look at what we do." Yeah.
A lot of these plot sequences also are shot alongside these like interstitials of our characters kind of hanging out just in Las Vegas, like it's sunrise or sunset, and they'll be hanging out next to like the pyramid, like the Luxor and these pyramid things in front of the MGM hotel that like have this kind of ancient history vibe versus like walking by Excalibur, New York with the roller coasters and all this crazy stuff. Like all of this backdrop, they went out and shot in Vegas for a few days to film our characters in different outfits, outside smoking, like finding themselves alongside some music, and that stuff gets a bit dreamlike. And I think that may pull general audiences away a little bit. But I do think it's affecting. And honestly, steps on the gas in the right places, because there may be a scene that's like really sad or really a downer, and it'll step into like a couple of those with some good music and kind of get you into like a transition to the next scene. In parts, it feels a little piecemeal. It feels a little put together in editing. But in other parts, like it feels really sincere, and that's grounded by really great performances. Like for a small cast, they're all doing really good work in Last Showgirl. Gia Coppola knows how to get a performance out of her cast, I guess. Like she's on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk about one last thing. Was your screening a little out of focus from sometimes?
Oh my God. What lens was this movie shot with? You saw this too? We haven't talked about this.
Yeah.
Kinda, like a little bit. Tell me about it. What did you see?
So kind of when it first started, first of all, I think it's on 35 millimeter film because it's super grainy and yes. Which is fine. But then there were parts where everything was kind of out of focus, and I was about to get up and say something, find a projectionist or something, but then it would clear up, and then another scene would be a little out of focus. So it's definitely an artistic and stylistic choice. Again, it makes sense with kind of the dreamlike atmosphere and tone, but a couple of times I was like, is this out of focus? Why is this out of focus?
Yes. So the first, at least the first half, I really noticed it, and then I stopped noticing it in acts 2 and 3, which makes me think maybe I don't know if they shot this in order. I don't know what lenses they were using. They use some lens in like the first third of this movie that they'll use on occasion, which like the edges of the frame are so blurred. It's so blurry around the top and bottom and sides of the frame. The center is pretty much in focus, but if it's at all out of focus, it comes off looking wonky, and they do it a lot. There's this whole opening scene where like the girls all get together at Shelley's place and they're like having a cookout. And Bautista's character comes over, and a lot of that looks like it's almost out of focus. And then again, mentioning the film, there's a couple sequences where there's like literally a hair sticking in down into the frame that they didn't bother editing out. Like I saw it in one scene and couldn't look away from it. It's like during a pivotal scene when Pam Anderson's talking to Kiernan Shipka's character or Billy Lord's character. They're having like this confrontation, and it's like there's just a hair sticking out of the bottom of the frame. And then there's another one where she's confronting Dave Bautista's character, and there's so much noise in the film they're running through. There's like scratches and like a little spot. I'm just like, what am I looking at here? And I think all of it is to make it feel older and indie and have some of that film grain to it. Like I get the stylistic choice, but like some of it feels like y'all couldn't have cleaned this up in editing. Y'all couldn't have After Effects this or something. And I don't know, like it seems like it's left in on purpose. And I the only reason I could think to do that is, I don't know, some like commitment to authenticity. I also noticed it was distracting, and that's a good point. I do think people might be distracted by that presentation. Makes you feel human for sure, but also like breaks the illusion a little bit. You're like, when I can't focus on what I'm seeing on screen, it doesn't help. But yeah, strange choice for The Last Showgirl. Regardless.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
just some interesting lens choices and way the film's portrayed for sure.
Yeah. I do want to tell you the story of the people behind me, but for the folks on YouTube who may not want to hear it, I do want to just hop straight to recommendations, and then I'll tell you about it after. Any other thoughts on Last Showgirl for recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Would you recommend The Last Showgirl?
Yeah, absolutely would. This was a little bit of a surprise. I've heard a lot of good things, and it really delivered. Pamela Anderson, this is like a career best performance. It's a real movie. It's a real role about chasing your dream, the cost of that, found family, what it means to be a woman, youth and beauty. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And it's 90 minutes. It's a quick watch, so highly recommend.
Yeah, same. I think Last Showgirl is super fun. It's not perfect. Like I said, I do think in Act 2, there's some of those kind of dream sequences that'll maybe push away more general audiences. But like the drama is real pulpy. It's not that sad. It seems like it'd be like a tragic downer going into it. It's not. I think it has more to say about hope and change and looking forward to what's next than dreading about what's behind us. Like, I think Pam Anderson's great. I think she needs to get more work. Everybody in this movie is good. I mean it. Everybody in this movie is good. The cast is all bangers. They're all great. They all have their moments. Would recommend. Last Showgirl's great. The thing I wanted to tell, the story about the people behind me before we jump into what we're looking forward to in 2025. Yeah, I tweeted about this earlier today. There was a couple behind me that I didn't know about till after the movie was over. And it's like, as soon as Last Showgirl hit credits, like the second it dimmed to black, the moment, like, and it's an emotional, for me, it was an emotionally affecting ending. I wasn't like tear jerked or anything, but like, I was sitting in my silence. I was like, dude, that was nuts. I'm like thinking about what I'm going to tell the people I know who saw it. Like, dude, this movie's really good. And right behind me, I hear a guy say like, it didn't really have an ending. And then a girl next to him's like, what? And he's like, it didn't really like end. It didn't really like go anywhere. And she's like, what do you mean? And they start to have this conversation. It's a couple. And he's just kind of like, I thought it sucked. Like, that's just kind of it. It's like, it's not, the credits are just starting to roll. And he's like, he couldn't wait to tell her how bad it was. Like, it didn't go anywhere. And again, I think some of those dream sequences he might have gotten a little bumped off by, but she asked a couple questions about it and then just hits him with the most blunt, like, well, thank you for coming to my movie. And then they get up and leave. And I was like, oh, dude, that's such a bummer.
That's a bummer too, because it's definitely, it ends, and it's the kind of thing you just want to sit with for like 2 minutes. Like, let the credits roll, wash over you. Just
he couldn't wait to tell her how bad it was, and it was such a bummer because it's not a bad movie. That guy's just an idiot, and now he's never going to hear this. He's not going, whatever, guy. Like, you're fine. You're entitled to your own opinion, but man. Dude, come on. Like, let people sit with it for a minute. Like, let it simmer. Like, turn, check your tone at the door, my guy. Read the room. It was such a bummer. I waited through the rest of the credits, then got up, and there was like a woman sitting towards the back who had like Kleenex, dude. She was like torn up by the end of the movie. I was like, oh, dude, like, and this guy's like, that was terrible. It didn't go anywhere. I was like, oh, dude. Whatever. Anyway, we got to stop talking about Last Showgirl. It's a banger. Go check it out. What we need to talk about is what's coming up this next year. And it's a big year, dude. 2025 is a big year at the movies. I'm really excited to talk about it. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the death of cinema.